At the age of 39, Anton Bruckner, for the first time, attempted to write a symphony. He did this at the end of 2 years of study with Otto Kitzler, who he had studied orchestration and form with. And at the end of this time, his sort of graduation exercise was the F minor symphony. And I think for this reason, a lot of people have tended to think it's not that important a work. And of course, it was neglected. It was never published during his lifetime. As a matter of fact, the premiere of the symphony didn't occur until 1972. And since then, it's been very rarely played. Both the Vienna Philharmonic and the Berlin Philharmonic have not played the piece and are only going to do it in the bicentennial year of Bruckner's birth for the very first time. But when you listen to it, the question is, does it seem like a study symphony or does it seem like a symphony by Bruckner? Well, there are a couple of things that are different. It begins with a 7-bar phrase. This is something Bruckner would never have done in one of his later symphonies. And in fact, if he had ever revised that first symphony, he would have eliminated that because he got very obsessed with making his phrases very regular. Another thing is that the last movement is in sonata form and he has a repeat of the exposition. All of his later last movements are in sonata form, but he never again repeats the exposition. But there are many more things that are very, very much like the Bruckner we know. For example, the end of the first movement ends with a phrase that will remind everybody of the coda of the first movement of the 8th Symphony. In the scherzo, it starts with a theme that sounds like almost a gloss of the theme that he used in the 7th Symphony. There are passages in the last movement that are going to remind you of passages in the 4th Symphony. And perhaps most glorious of all is the fact that at the end of the slow movement, he ends with a phrase that is going to remind you of the very last piece he ever completed, which was the slow movement of his 9th Symphony. So this way he brings it full circle in a very kind of sad way. The music itself is glorious. It is echt Bruckner. It is very, very much in his style. It is beautiful stuff, and it derives in some ways out of the music of his time. You will hear echoes of Schubert. You will hear echoes in particular of Mendelssohn. But it sounds very much like Bruckner, and if you were to never have heard it before and you were to hear it and you know any of the music of Bruckner, you would immediately recognize the F minor symphony as a very fine work